Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
History Makers with Matt Prater.
Coming off of drugs, you're going to have emotional problems, but I kept chasing after God.
And he's using this vehicle to bring people out of that dark into the light.
And I went forward and I knelt at the front, and it was a radical conversion experience.
And that's where the big change happened, and that's where we decided we're going to use our music for God, we're going to change our songs.
When I was about 25-year-old, I was busted and into jail, and it was there that I came to the Lord.
History Makers with Matt Prater.
Hi, and welcome to History Makers. I'm Matt Prater. Today we're chatting with Pastor Dave Quak from the Sunburnt Souls podcast. It's great. I've been listening to this podcast recently, really enjoying some of his guests. We can hear a bit of his story today. Welcome along, mate. Tell us a bit of your background. Where were you born and raised?
Thanks so much, Matt. Yes, I was born in Darwin, so I love the heat. Grew up in Brisbane and, bounced around a little bit, moved to the Whitsundays for a little while and down to Melbourne, but essentially now just planted on the Gold Coast.
Okay, and tell us a bit about your faith journey. Did you have like a religious upbringing?
I did. I bounced around in a Reformed church as a kid. It didn't land for me as a child, so I had about maybe 7 years as a prodigal son, and then returned when I was about 20 and came to faith, and ever since then I've been really following Jesus and loving him.
And what was your conversion experience like? How did that happen?
Look, it did happen over a period of time. So I had a couple of big moments like at rallies and things, but it took a couple of years of really asking questions and dealing with God and essentially learning that he did love me. I grew up thinking that he, for some reason, hated me and wanted to, squash me. And it really took a long time for me to accept his love for me, Matt. And that's why it took a while, yeah.
And was there a big change when you finally surrendered?
Look, it didn't happen overnight. I get a little jealous of those guys who say I was going one way, God changed me and all my addictions and everything fell off. It wasn't that case. For me, I just took a little bit longer to for the old man to die. I still had some habits that took a while to leave me, Matt. And over the next couple of years, I kind of came to a place where I felt, okay, this is my life for now and forever. Yeah.
And tell us, what did you do for work after school? Like, what did you go to uni? Did you study? What did you do?
No, I didn't actually. My mum sent me up to the Whitsundays. It's ironic. She sent me, so back then the Whitsundays were cool. Now they're dilapidated, kind of like abandoned islands. But when I was in the 90s, that's where we went instead of Bali and everywhere else. And so I was a bartender and working in a pool bar, Matt.
Wow.
So basically people would swim up, sit on the edge of the pool and order drinks. So for an 18-year-old man, it seemed to be the life. This was before I knew Jesus. And Mum sent me up there to try to get away from a bit of a negative sort of drug scene I was stuck in Brisbane.
Yep.
But as you know, when you're not set free from that stuff, change of location doesn't change a thing. It has to be a change of heart. And so I just sort of fell back into the same habits. But it was part of my journey. And then so I was in hospitality industry until I met Jesus, and then pretty quickly fell into ministry after that.
And did you go to Bible college straight away?
No, later. I was a pastor for a while. I did YMIS. I don't know if YMS still exists, but it was the youth ministry course that SU ran as a qualifying sort of course for chaplaincy.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went and did a Bachelor of Ministries in the Baptist Bible College, and then later on a Master's of Ministries as well,
And tell us about where you were youth pastoring.
Okay, so that was called Beachside Christian Church, and that was a church that just exploded. We were... it's 20 years old now, really missional to the surfing community. Lots of people came to Jesus. I was under a great senior pastor called Wes Jessup, and we were blessed to see, lots of people meet Christ and just, people that you wouldn't expect in church come, and encounter him.
And then how'd you become a senior pastor?
Okay, so from Beachside, my wife and I planted a church.
Yep.
A good plant, not one of those, in brackets plants where it's like a split, but there's really just a group of people going down the road. A good plant. We went with a small team, and then over the next 12 years, God's blessed us with, a great church, and we're still leading that and don't plan to stop unless God says something otherwise. So.
And you're in Tugun at the Gold Coast, one of my favourite parts of the world. Great beaches there, hey?
Great beaches, close to the airport. We need people to plant churches on the coast. Come to the coast. God is calling you to the coast.
Okay, thank you, Lord. I hear that.
Yeah,
I hear that.
come to the coast.
And tell us about the name of your church.
Okay, it's called Living Temple Christian Church. Now, Matt, before you tease me, because we get teased a lot, I know there's a lot of crazy names getting around. We sometimes get mistaken for like a Jehovah's Witness church or something, but we called it Living Temple Christian Church because we really believe that the person is the living temple of the Holy Spirit. It's in Corinthians that, that God's Spirit dwells in human beings as the representative of his presence here on earth. And so, though churches are great and I love my church and I love your church, the people of God is where the church is built. And so we're really about the person being the living temple who takes God out into the community.
Absolutely, mate.
Yeah.
I love it. And tell us a bit about, I know you had some Easter services.
Yeah.
And you actually do baptisms on Easter Sunday morning on the beach with other churches combined. Yeah. What a great idea.
Yeah, it's great. So it's been going for a few years. 5 churches get together.
Wow.
We meet at Currumbin down on the beach, and we all have like communal worship together, a short message, and then people from all the different churches get baptized.
Love it.
And it's so cool, Matt. Like just this expression of unity. We all walk down, baptize a bunch of people, and then come up, pray over them, and then have a really lovely breakfast all together. And then everybody goes and has their Easter Sunday.
I just love hearing churches getting together, baptizing people on the beach, mate. That ticks all my boxes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right, now tell us, why did you start this new podcast?
Okay, so Sunburnt Souls came out of my journey. So I've been a pastor for 20 years now, and in the midst of doing that, I've struggled with my own mental illness. Part of it started as, I was going through deep periods of depression and I couldn't understand why, and then other periods where I was just sort of like anxious and heightened and I couldn't understand why. And so I ended up seeing a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and they eventually diagnosed me with bipolar type 2. Which is actually, so bipolar's got like a family of diagnosis. And my particular diagnosis in bipolar means that basically the 2 poles of emotions are really extreme for me. So I'll be elated and we call it manic, where I'm heightened, and it feels kind of like you've had 5 coffees and that you're really jacked up and you're really excited, and it goes for certain different periods. Some people go for a few days, some people longer. I go for a couple of months, which is kind of problematic. So I'll be manic for a couple of months, which means I won't sleep for more than a few hours a night. I'll be overexcited. I'll speak over people. I'll be kind of like, really flighty and come up with ideas that probably aren't rational and try to implement things that I haven't thought through. And that'll last for a couple of months, and then my body will run out of adrenaline and whatever else, and then I'll crash into deep darkness. So one day I'll feel like I can change the world, and the next day I'll feel like the world's better without me, and then that'll go for a couple of weeks as well. And so I started Sunburnt Souls because I started seeing lots of people like me who love Jesus. Like, I'm a sold-out Christian, Matt. I love him. I'll serve him till the day I die. I just love him. But at the same time as being fully in love with Jesus, I'm also broken, and I've got this mental illness that just, hovers around. And I've just noticed there's lots of people like me who are the same. And I wanted to create a space where there was encouragement for those of us on that intersection between faith and mental health. And so Sunburnt Souls is designed to have guests that have lived experience. So I've got pastors who have burnt out, and I've got a couple of ex-heroin addicts who were heroin addicts for 13 years and their redemption story. Talk to people with OCD. I've got a friend coming on in a couple of weeks as well with like some, around just like eating disorders and where that came from and dysmorphia and a bunch of stuff. Wow. And so I just really wanted to create a space where people with lived experience could come and chat. And then also experts who speak into this can come and bring words of life as well.
Fantastic, mate. Yeah. And, I just think it's such an important subject because, we know since COVID that the increase in mental health battles around the world, it's increased dramatically.
Yes.
And as pastors, we need to be educated. We need to be understanding and empathetic with people. And let's just talk about the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
A lot of pastors would just pray for someone, say be healed,
Exactly.
and then think that's all they need to do.
Yes.
What's your answer to that?
Look, it's messy, and I used to be that guy, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
It's solved at 5 minutes at the altar, and I know it can be, but my experience is it's usually not. And I think why Sunburnt Souls exists is I think way on one extreme is that idea of exactly that it's solved just with one prayer and it should be sorted. And then right at the other end, okay, it's got nothing to do with spirituality. It's just a, only a chemical imbalance and medicine will fix it.
Yeah.
So they're the two extremes.
Yeah.
But I think there's just this whole grey messiness in between.
Yeah, definitely.
Where there's parts of both and, some people respond to different interventions different ways, and I want to explore that.
Good, yeah.
And also from a place where people who are experiencing this realize that just because they have mental illness doesn't mean God's turned his back on them that he's punishing them or any of those negative, unhelpful theologies that make people feel condemned. When we're mentally ill, it's not because God's turned away from us. He looks at us in that illness and draws near to us and wants to minister to us and be there with us. And so, I just wanted to create a bit of space for that. And so we've started doing a few online gatherings as well, which have been cool, kind of like Zoom chats where people can come and just participate in an online discussion about this. And if they're feeling vulnerable, they can turn off the camera and just sit and listen. Good. If they want to engage, they can. I just guess I would love to promote the idea of churches just having a greater awareness of what it means for somebody to be a follower of Christ who walks in these shoes.
I was just thinking of a guy, we just did some baptisms recently.
Yeah.
There's a guy who's been coming to our church for 10 years, on and off drugs for 10 years. He's had schizophrenia for 10 years. Every great preacher and man of God and person that's come through our church has prayed for him. He's up the front at most altar calls.
Yep.
Still getting these voices in his head. They change his medication. He's in and out of the mental health, But you know what? He keeps coming.
Yeah, good on him.
Because he's loved, he's accepted, he's welcomed. And he actually got up and shared a testimony recently on Sunday. One of the best. He's quoting Bible verses, one of the best testimonies you're going to hear. And, I'd love to see him completely set free and transformed from that.
Yeah.
He's still walking with it. But you know what? God's using him to reach out to many people.
Yes.
He's known as a bit of an evangelist around Fortitude Valley in Brisbane. And he knows everyone. Everyone knows him. But God's using him in the midst of that battle he's going through,
Yeah.
And that's just some of the situations we face in our churches. We need to talk about them and make sure people don't feel like, you're not loved, or because you haven't been completely set free, it's your fault. You haven't got enough faith. We just need to love and accept people where they're at.
Absolutely.
And God can still use them.
Absolutely, Matt. You just nailed it. Like, you're exactly where I think we need as a church to come to. Like, sometimes we think people with mental illness are disqualified from being used for God's purposes.
Yeah.
But we would be crazy to say that about a guy in a wheelchair, right?
Yeah,
and
true.
they're both chronic illnesses. They're both long-term.
True.
Right? And so we've just got to, I don't know, I know for myself, some of the most profound, insightful things have happened through somebody who the world would call mentally ill.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Matt, one day I'm in church. My mum dragged me to this church because this is what happens when you're a pastor, is that your mums want to show off their church to you. You've probably had this, right? So Mum said, you got to check out my new pastor. Now, I don't know if this guy was having a bad day, but it went on and on and on. Yeah. And look, man, I've studied a lot of theology. I've sat through long lectures, but even I was struggling.
Yeah.
Anyway, it went on, and then all of a sudden this guy stood up and he goes, boring! This is boring! I want to play basketball! Right? This young guy. He's like 15. Anyway, so my cheeky mum, who had dragged me there, jumped up, took him outside and started playing basketball with him, right? And I'm like watching her all jealous, stuck there in the pews, getting a sore back. And as he walked out, the guy preaching said, sorry, folks, this guy's got learning difficulties.
Right. Yep.
And I thought, learning difficulties? What learning difficulties? This kid is the smartest person in the room and saying what everybody else is thinking. Do you know what I mean? And then we say, oh, he's got learning difficulties.
Yeah.
He's the only one there speaking the truth. Do you know what I mean? And so I think we write off people for all different reasons where I just think, man, they are God's geniuses.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, some people have the idea that bipolar is my superpower, because the crazy thing about it, Matt, is like, say I'm manic, but I'm like 70% on the way up.
Yeah.
Productive, like insightful, can read, like just devour scripture. Like there's sometimes within the waves, where it's a real gift. It's just about managing it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I love that you are tackling this subject in your podcast. Where can people find the Sunburnt Souls podcast?
Yeah, so you can go straight to our website at sunburntsouls.com, and then also the podcast is on all of the major platforms. So Spotify, Apple, you know, Google, all of them. And so basically, if you just Google Sunburnt Souls in Australia, it is the only name at the moment with that name.
Yep.
Which I'm stoked about. And you can listen there. And any time you listen and share, I'd really appreciate it, because I really have a heart to see this get out there. So,
awesome, mate. It's been so good to catch up with you, Pastor Dave Quak. I reckon you're a history maker. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Matt.
If you'd like to hear this conversation again, listen online anytime at historymakersradio.com. There you'll also find links to all of our social media channels, and you can subscribe to our iTunes podcast. History Makers is a faith-based ministry, and we want to thank everyone for their generous support. If you've got a suggestion of anyone we should interview, send us an email, info@historymakersradio.com. God bless. I'm Matt Prater, and my challenge to you now is to go and make history.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.